The doorbell rang, and Logan's heart pounded like it never had before. Jackson was about to walk into the party Logan had secretly planned for months, unaware that the man he once loved was about to turn his world upside down. Logan adjusted the collar of his simple button-down shirt one last time, checking the reflection in the hallway mirror of the sprawling Los Angeles mansion he had purchased 3 years ago in complete secrecy. The house smelled of fresh lilies and catered hors d'oeuvres, the kind Jackson had always loved but could never afford on his barista salary. Logan had told everyone it belonged to a wealthy friend who was out of town. No one, including Jackson, knew the truth, that Logan had built a quiet tech fortune after their breakup using the coding skills he once downplayed as a hobby. He opened the door with a practiced smile. Jackson stood there, 29 years old, still devastatingly handsome, with those sharp cheekbones and messy dark hair that fell into his eyes the same way it had the night they met at a downtown gallery opening. "Logan, you really did this?" Jackson asked, stepping inside, eyes widening at the string lights, the balloon arch, and the 20 guests already mingling in the open-plan living room. "Happy birthday, man," Logan said, keeping his voice light. "Figured you deserved something special after the year you've had." He didn't mention the late nights spent coordinating with Jackson's sister or the way his own hands had shaken while writing the guest list. Jackson pulled him into a quick hug, the kind that lasted half a second too long, and Logan felt every old scar reopen. 3 years had passed since Jackson ended things with that devastating line, "I can't keep hiding who I am for someone who's never going to be out in the real world with me." Logan had been too afraid back, then too wrapped up in his conservative family's expectations and the fear that his growing success would make Jackson feel small. So he had let him go. The party kicked off smoothly. Jackson's best friend Marcus clapped him on the back, laughing about old college stories. A few coworkers from the coffee shop brought gag gifts. Logan stayed in the background, refilling drinks, making small talk, playing the supportive ex who had clearly moved on. Inside his chest, every laugh from Jackson felt like a victory, and every glance toward him like a knife. By 9 o'clock, the mood had shifted. Jackson's new circle, the Loud group from his gym, had arrived with bottles of tequila and louder opinions. They didn't know the full history, only that Logan was the guy from before. Marcus leaned against the marble island, swirling his drink. "Dude, you really got your ex to throw you a party? That's next-level pity." Jackson chuckled, but there was an edge to it, the same edge Logan remembered from their worst fights. "What can I say? Logan's always been the nice one. Still working that dead-end coding gig, right? Must be tough scraping by in this city." The group erupted in laughter. One of the gym guys, a tall blonde named Tyler, slapped Jackson's shoulder. "Man, I can't believe you dated a guy who can't even afford his own place. No wonder you upgraded." Logan stood frozen behind the kitchen counter, the ice bucket heavy in his hands. The words landed exactly where they were meant to, exposing every insecurity Jackson had once confessed in the dark after too much wine. Logan had hidden his wealth to prove his love was real, not bought. Now that choice was being used against him. Jackson didn't defend him. Instead, he raised his glass, joining the toast to moving on from the past. The room cheered. Logan felt the familiar burn of shame rise in his throat, the same shame that had kept him closeted through college, the same shame his father had drilled into him with every Be a Man lecture. But tonight something was different. 3 years of therapy, 3 years of building a life. He was proud of 3 years of missing the only man who had ever seen the real him. Logan set the ice bucket down, walked to the center of the room, and cleared his throat. The laughter died down. "Actually," he said, voice steady for the first time in years, "this isn't my friend's house. It's mine. I bought it the month after we broke up because I wanted to prove I could build something real without hiding anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. Jackson's glass slipped from his fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. Jackson stared at him, mouth open, the color draining from his face. Tyler laughed, nervously thinking it was a joke, until Logan pulled out his phone, opened the property app, and turned the screen toward the crowd. The deed showed Logan's full name and the purchase date. Gasps rippled through the room. "You've been lying this whole time?" Jackson whispered, the betrayal raw in his voice. Logan met his eyes, refusing to look away. "I wasn't lying to hurt you. I was trying to protect what we had. You left because you thought I would never be brave enough to stand beside you in public. I spent every day since proving you wrong, even when you weren't here to see it. Marcus stepped forward, arms crossed. Hold on. You let us all think you were broke. That's messed up, Logan. Jackson's been beating himself up thinking he walked away from a guy who couldn't keep up. The words hit Logan harder than any insult. He had replayed their breakup 1,000 times in his mind, but hearing it confirmed from someone else cracked something open. I know, he admitted, and I was wrong. I was scared of my family, finding out scared of losing the last thread of approval I had left. But tonight, I realized that hiding my success was just another closet. Jackson's sister Elena, who had helped plan the party, without knowing the full stakes, grabbed her brother's arm. Jackson, you need to hear him out. He's been sending you anonymous gifts for years. The new espresso machine at the shop, the rent covered when your landlord hiked it, that was Logan. The room shifted. The mocking smiles faded into uncomfortable stares. Tyler muttered something about needing air and slipped toward the patio. Logan felt the weight of every secret he had carried since coming out to himself at 17 in a small Texas town, where being gay meant choosing between family and truth. Jackson turned away, pressing his palms to his eyes. I can't do this right now. He pushed through the guests and disappeared down the hallway toward the guest rooms Logan had furnished with memories in mind. The same blue throw blanket Jackson loved, the shelf of photography books they used to read together. Logan didn't follow. Instead, he faced the remaining guests. The party's over. Thank you for coming, but I think Jackson and I need to talk. His voice didn't shake. For the first time, he sounded like the man he had become. As people filed out, Marcus paused at the door. You really loved him, didn't you? Still do, Logan said simply. Alone in the quiet mansion, Logan sank onto the leather couch, the same one he had imagined sharing with Jackson on lazy Sundays. The glowing city lights of Los Angeles stretched beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a reminder that life kept moving whether you were ready or not. He thought about his parents back in Austin, still sending Christmas cards addressed only to him, never acknowledging the partner they suspected existed. He thought about the promotion he had turned down last year because it required relocating, and he couldn't bear leaving the city where Jackson still lived. The sound of footsteps pulled him back. Jackson stood at the edge of the living room, eyes red. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was terrified that if you knew I had money, you'd think I was trying to buy your love the way my father always bought silence for me. Logan stood slowly. I wanted you to choose me for me. Not the house, not the bank account, just the guy who stayed up all night coding so we could afford that trip to Big Sur. Jackson crossed the room, stopping just short of touching him. I chose fear instead. My family, the church group I grew up in. They made it sound like loving you was a sin I could outgrow. When I left, I told myself it was for both of us, but really I was running. The confession hung between them, heavy and honest. Logan reached out, brushing a tear from Jackson's cheek the first time he had touched him in 3 years. We both ran, but maybe we can stop now. They talked until sunrise. Jackson admitted the new boyfriend he had briefly dated after their breakup had only lasted 6 months before the same pressures resurfaced. Logan shared stories of therapy sessions where he finally said out loud the words his father had forbidden. By the time the sky turned pink, they were sitting side by side on the couch, shoulders touching the way they used to. The next morning brought reality crashing in. Logan's phone buzzed with a text from his mother. Your father saw pictures from last night on Marcus's Instagram. We need to talk. The message was followed by a screenshot of the party before the big reveal, captioned, Throwback vibes with the ex who never quite measured up. Logan stared at the words, feeling the old familiar knot in his stomach. Jackson noticed the change in his expression. Your family. Logan nodded, sliding the phone across the coffee table. They still think if they ignore it long enough, I'll magically become the straight son who takes over the family business. Jackson picked up the phone, reading the message twice. You don't have to face them alone anymore. The offer was simple, but it carried the weight of everything they had lost. They spent the day cleaning up the remnants of the party side by side like old times. Jackson found an old photo album Logan had kept hidden in the guest room, photos of their first apartment, their road trip to Yosemite, the night Logan had whispered, I love you for the first time. You kept all this? Jackson asked, voice thick. Couldn't throw it away, Logan replied. It was the only proof that what we had was real. By afternoon, they were sitting on the backyard patio overlooking the infinity pool, Jackson's head resting on Logan's shoulder. "I was so angry at you last night," Jackson admitted. "But mostly I was angry at myself for believing the lie that I wasn't worth the risk." Logan laced their fingers together. "We're both worth the risk." The conversation turned deeper. Jackson spoke about the pressure at work, where his boss had once made a casual joke about the gay barista loud enough for customers to hear. Logan shared the boardroom meetings where he smiled through homophobic comments because coming out could cost contracts. The house that had once felt like a lonely trophy now felt like the beginning of something shared. That evening, they cooked dinner together in the gourmet kitchen, Jackson chopping vegetables while Logan stirred pasta sauce. The domesticity felt both foreign and perfectly right. Halfway through the meal, Jackson set his fork down. "What happens when your parents show up?" Or, "My sister tells the rest of the family." "We tell the truth," Logan said. "All of it. No more hiding behind jokes or half-lives." The decision settled between them like a promise. Later, as they stood on the balcony watching the city lights, Jackson turned to him. "I missed this." "Missed you?" Logan pulled him close, their foreheads touching. "Welcome home." But peace was short-lived. The following morning, a knock echoed through the house. Logan's father stood on the doorstep, face stern. Beside him, his mother, clutching her purse like a shield. "We saw the pictures," his father said, stepping inside without invitation. "Care to explain why you're throwing parties for your friend in a house we didn't know you owned?" Logan felt Jackson's hand brush his back in silent support. "He's not just a friend, Dad. He's the man I love. And this house, I bought it with the company I built because I finally stopped waiting for your approval." The confrontation stretched for hours. Accusations flew, old wounds reopened. Jackson stood his ground beside Logan, offering quiet facts when Logan's voice faltered. By the time his parents left, the air was raw, but something had shifted. His mother had hugged him goodbye, whispering, "I just want you happy." It wasn't acceptance, but it was a crack in the wall. Weeks blurred into a new rhythm. Logan and Jackson moved through the house like two people rediscovering a language they had almost forgotten. Mornings brought coffee on the patio, evenings brought long talks about the future. Jackson started staying over more often, his toothbrush appearing beside Logan's in the master bathroom. Yet the outside world refused to stay quiet. At Jackson's coffee shop, customers whispered when they saw Logan pick him up after shifts. One regular, a middle-aged woman who had always been friendly, suddenly stopped tipping and muttered about lifestyle choices. Jackson laughed it off, but Logan saw the tension in his shoulders. Work brought its own challenges. Logan's tech firm had landed a major government contract that required background checks. The HR director pulled him aside one afternoon. "We've received an anonymous tip about your personal life. Nothing illegal, but the client is conservative. You might want to keep things low-key." Logan stared at her, the old fear rising. This time he didn't smile and nod. "My personal life is exactly that, personal. If the contract depends on me pretending I'm someone I'm not, then maybe we shouldn't take it." The decision cost the company a six-figure deal, but it earned Logan something priceless: respect from his team. Several coworkers who had stayed silent for years started coming out to him in private messages. The ripple effect surprised even him. Jackson faced his own reckoning. His sister Elena invited them to a family barbecue in the suburbs. The backyard was full of cousins and aunts who had known Jackson since childhood. When he introduced Logan as his partner, the silence lasted only seconds before his uncle clapped him on the back. "About time you brought someone home properly." Not everyone was welcoming. An older cousin pulled Jackson aside later. "You sure about this? Kids are involved at these things." Jackson's response was calm but firm. "The only thing I'm sure about is that love isn't contagious, and it sure as hell isn't choice." Driving home that night, Jackson rested his hand on Logan's thigh. "I used to think coming out meant losing everyone. Turns out it just sorts the real ones from the rest." Logan smiled, but inside, he carried a different weight. His own family had gone radio silent after the house confrontation. Then one Tuesday evening, his mother called. "Your father had a heart scare last week. He's asking for you." They flew to Texas together. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and regret. Logan's father lay pale against the pillows, but his eyes sharpened when they walked in. "You brought him," he said flatly. Jackson hung back, giving them space. Logan sat on the edge of the bed. "Dad, I'm not here to fight. I'm here because you're my father and I love you. But I won't apologize for loving him." The conversation that followed was halting and imperfect. His father didn't offer blessings, but he didn't demand Logan leave either. Small steps. When they left the hospital, Jackson squeezed Logan's hand. "You faced him. That's more than I ever did with my own dad." Back in Los Angeles, life continued to unfold in layers. Logan started mentoring young LGBTQ plus coders through a local nonprofit. Jackson began documenting their story in a private journal, pages filled with honest reflections on forgiveness and growth. The house that had once been Logan's secret became their shared sanctuary, hosting quiet dinners with new friends who understood the journey. One crisp autumn evening, Logan stood on the balcony watching Jackson tend the small herb garden they had planted together. The sight filled him with a quiet certainty he hadn't felt in years. He had spent so long measuring his worth by other people's approval that he had almost forgotten how to measure it by his own happiness. Jackson looked up, catching his eye, and smiled the same smile that had once made Logan's world stop spinning. "Come help me with these tomatoes before the raccoons get them." They worked side by side, dirt under their nails, laughing when Jackson accidentally sprayed Logan with a hose. In that moment, the past felt distant, the future bright. Yet Logan knew shadows lingered. Jackson's old friends from the gym still texted occasionally with passive digs about selling out for money. Logan ignored them, but Jackson sometimes read the messages aloud, turning the hurt into humor. The real test came during the holidays. Logan's mother invited them to Austin for Christmas, insisting it was time to try again. The flight felt longer than usual. When they arrived, the house smelled of pine and his mother's famous pecan pie. His father sat in the living room, watching football, the same ritual Logan remembered from childhood. Dinner was tense at first. Conversations skirted around politics and faith until Jackson asked Logan's father about his old fishing boat. The question opened a door. For 2 hours, they talked boats and engines and the simple joy of being on the water. No grand declarations, just ordinary talk between two men who both loved the same sun. Later that night, in the guest room, Logan lay awake, listening to Jackson's steady breathing. "Thank you," he whispered into the darkness, "for coming here with me." Jackson rolled over, pulling him close. "We're a team now. No more solo missions." The next morning brought snow, the first in years. They walked the neighborhood hand in hand, ignoring the curious glances from neighbors. Logan's mother watched from the window, tears in her eyes, but she didn't look away. Small victories accumulated like snowflakes, each one changing the landscape. Back home in Los Angeles, they threw their first official party as a couple. The guest list included old friends, new allies, and even Tyler, who showed up with an awkward apology and a bottle of good wine. Laughter filled the mansion, genuine this time. Marcus pulled Logan aside near midnight. "You two look good together, like you finally figured it out." Logan glanced across the room, where Jackson was telling a story, hands moving animatedly. "We did, the hard way." As the year turned, Logan and Jackson sat on the same balcony where their second chance had begun. Fireworks lit the sky over the city. Jackson turned to him, eyes shining. "Remember the night I walked out?" Logan nodded. "I remember the night you walked back in." They kissed under the exploding colors, a kiss that tasted of forgiveness and future plans. The mansion no longer felt like a secret, it felt like home. Spring brought new beginnings. Logan proposed on a quiet hike in the hills above the city, the same trail where they had shared their first real date years earlier. Jackson said yes before Logan even finished the question, tears mixing with laughter. The ring was simple platinum with an inscription inside: "No more hiding." Planning the wedding forced them to confront remaining fractures. Jackson's extended family split down the middle, some refusing to attend, others sending warm messages of support. Logan's parents surprised everyone by booking flights and offering to host the rehearsal dinner. The journey wasn't linear, but it was theirs. On the wedding day, the mansion garden bloomed with white roses and string lights. Logan stood at the makeshift altar heart full as Jackson walked toward him flanked by Elena and Marcus. Vows were spoken without scripts, honest words about growth and choice and the courage it took to love openly. I used to think love meant sacrificing parts of myself, Jackson said, voice steady. You taught me it means bringing every part into the light. Logan replied, you taught me that the bravest thing I could ever do was stop running from who I am. The reception stretched late into the night. Dancing under the stars, Logan pulled Jackson close, swaying to a slow song. Around them, friends and chosen family celebrated not just a marriage, but a victory over every doubt, every prejudice, every fear that had once threatened to divide them. Months later, they sat on the same patio where their story had restarted. Jackson's hand rested on Logan's knee, a quiet anchor. The house echoed with plans for the future, maybe adoption, maybe travel, maybe simply growing old together in the life they had fought to build. Looking back, Logan realized the birthday party had never been about proving ownership of a house. It had been about claiming ownership of himself. Every mocking laugh, every shocked silence, every honest conversation had stripped away the layers until only truth remained. Jackson turned to him, smiling softly. What are you thinking about? Logan squeezed his hand. How lucky I am that you laughed at the wrong guy that night. They both laughed, the sound carrying across the garden into the bright California evening. The journey had been long, painful, and beautiful, but it had led them exactly where they belonged, together, unhidden and unafraid. True or false? Hiding your true self can ever protect the people you love?